My name is Greg Rusu, and I am the general manager of Zunicore, which is a Pure One division. Pure One Hosting is a Canadian-based company. We offer managed hosting, co-location, dedicated hosting, and we've just recently launched Zunicore, which is our cloud division. We've been in business for over 12 years. We've got 18 data centers worldwide and 23 points of presence in North America as well here in the UK. We are basically the birthplace of YouTube. YouTube was the first servers were hosted by Pure One up until their acquisition by Google. We're also the hosting provider for WordPress, Virgin Games, and a number of other folks. We've got basically we started our public cloud division in November of last year, and sort of introducing it here as well in the UK, and wanted to kind of highlight for you what it is that our approach and what it is that we've learned, and our philosophy sort of about the service that we've launched. So we started off trying to understand what are the businesses that are being faced, if you will, by UK businesses. If you'll notice, Zunicore, its tagline is professional cloud control. And the reason for this is that we cater essentially to professional firms that make their living online. Right? So we are not enterprise cloud, so we're not going to work with British Airways anytime soon. We're also not Grandma's Pictures website hosting company, so we're not focusing on those folks either. We are essentially focusing on professional firms that rely on online technology and an online presence to deliver their services. And so we started off doing a little bit of research in conjunction with growing business media. And we've discovered that the main concerns on the minds of UK professional firms are pretty much summarized here. And essentially they are managing cash flow, so particularly in this day and age, that's definitely an issue. Scaling up and down. If you were around for the previous presentation or other presentations, you will have heard that this notion of spike or bursts in traffic. That's a problematic issue that businesses are facing. Dealing with jargon. Our industry is replete with 3-letter and 4-letter acronyms that change every few months and are subject to debate based on who you ask. And so these professional firms are they're pragmatic and really are focusing on what the underlying issues are. And last but not least, security concerns. In the last few months, year or so, we've seen a number of attacks and attack vectors that have come pretty much out of nowhere against large companies such as Sony, as well as your regular website providers and so forth. Some of the highlights that I wanted to point out is that for a hosting company to provide cloud services makes sense. When you're buying a server, you're applying capital expense, and you're basically doing that for a machine that sits in the corner, idle roughly 87% of the time. And from a hosting company standpoint, we kind of take a look at, we kind of see when our customer servers are active, and we can sort of reference what those exposures are. What makes it worse is that when you're experiencing burst traffic for 1 or 2 hours a day, anywhere between 3 to 5 times the load that you would normally experience, you're compelled oftentimes to purchase additional equipment or additional compute resources. The challenge there, particularly for businesses, is to have all of that capital attached into a resource that is still sitting idle 87% of the time, and worse yet, maybe 3 to 5 times the amount of resource that anticipates traffic that will burst that also sits around idle for that amount of time. In terms of the financial picture is not desirable. So you've heard many solutions, and cloud is here to the rescue. What I'd like to do with Zunicore is to basically share with you how it is that we're coming at it. Specifically, we took a little bit of time to once we understood sort of what the professional firms were concerned with. We took a little bit of time to understand what the systemic problems are within the existing public cloud services. And it turns out that public clouds are still quite difficult to use. If you were around, again, for the last presentation, you heard references to developers working with the cloud to figure out the best solution and kind of trying to back into how the cloud infrastructure, whatever, really works. The promises of, don't worry, just throw your code in there, it'll scale just fine. Well, in reality, there's a little bit of work that still needs to be done. And for this reason, there are a lot of IT developers, or if you will, even software developers, that are working with businesses big and large to try to figure out and back into how exactly would I scale my code? How exactly do I scale my application? And the interface to do that still remains very difficult, command line, API driven, and so forth. The second thing is that you basically lack control of the resources that you really need. You get a small, medium, and large pool of resources that will have, if you need 16 gigabytes of RAM, well, you're going to wind up with 12 cores to go with it, whether your application needs it or not. Or the other way around. If I have an application, maybe I'm a rendering company, and I've got an application that basically requires a lot of CPUs, but not so much RAM, oh, too bad. I've got 8 gig of RAM that goes along for the ride every month that I've got to pay for because that's what I have. So control over the exact amount of resources that you'd need is not very widespread. Last but not least, pricing is impossible. There are a lot of companies that are pricing it based on pricing your cloud usage based on puts and gets and interaction between VMs. So my front end web service is talking to a back end whatever, and there's traffic going in between there, and so you have to really dive so far deep, profile your code and your application to such an extent to just come up with a forecast of how much is this stuff going to cost me every month. We kind of think that that's probably not very, very worthwhile. And then once you've done all of these things, you figured out how your installation was working, and you spent 3-4 months of your time to try to tune it to the exact implementation of whatever cloud provider you're running with. Now all of a sudden, if you want to move or scale to another provider, too bad. You're going to have to start that process all over again. So to us, these are the systemic problems that we tried to address with Zunicore. And the way in which we did this and our approach to it is basically, we came at it from kind of 4 different approaches. Number one is let's make public cloud solution-centric. And the idea here is that very few folks start off with a blank OS or would like to start off with a blank operating system, install your WordPress or Drupal or whatever, configure, tune, and then hand it over to a developer. Maybe the developer is doing this. A few hours later, maybe a day or 2 later, you wind up with work actually ready to commence. What we basically want to do is, with Zunicore, we're trying to provide solutions that are already there. You guys have seen WordPress appliances, and you've seen Drupal appliances, images, and so forth. Some of these are put together in the open source community, and you can get those, and you can get up and running and use them right away. But unfortunately, some of those are not exactly professionally supported, or they're not put together in a way that actually makes sense. You wouldn't necessarily want to run your business on top of that. So we'd like to basically provide, where our approach is, let's provide solutions or appliances that are grouped together. So I need maybe Apache, I need WordPress, or I need Drupal, I need PBX backend system, perhaps, Sugar CRM. I need all of these things, and I want them to be configured and run in the minimal amount of resources or the recommended number of resources that I need for decent performance. For an experienced system administrator to do that, it would take a matter of hours. But if these stacks are already created and tuned, there's no reason why it shouldn't take a matter of minutes. Another thing that we did with Zunicore is to provide additional control is to provide for customization. And the idea here is if you need to select as many CPUs, cores that you need, as much storage and RAM and whatever, mix and match whatever is appropriate, and don't buy resources that you don't need. Later, once your code complete or once your application is completely built out, basically give a self-service capability to scale those resources up and down to meet either a budgetary demand at the end of a month or a performance demand. Be transparent. Show exactly the resources that are consumed, and if you will, the pricing right alongside of that. No, without having to sort of dive deep into the code and trying to figure out traffic patterns and whatnot. That kind of talks a little bit to the fair play pricing. We've noticed that a lot of the cloud providers out there are surprised. Here's a charge for some feature you didn't expect. We don't like that. We think that that's very difficult to forecast, very difficult to sort of plan and kind of budget out into for a business that relies on computing resources to sort of meet cash flows and to just work operations. But at the same time, while we should be providing transparency and control, professional cloud users need professional features, which includes basically auto scaling at no cost. Right? So all this stuff should just be included in the platform. Auto scaling, you saw earlier, if you were here for the previous presentation, how traffic basically bursts, and it could burst 3 to 5 times. Well, you should have the ability to essentially get the resources that you need, CPU or memory or additional nodes, in the case of an auto-scaling load balancer, to basically automatically spin up when the load is there, and then spin back down when it's gone. And do so probably on an hourly basis, and not be charged for those resources. And do it while you are sleeping, or do it while you're not watching. And Zunicore basically provides that capability. Also, Anycast DNS. Anycast for in this day and age, if your application is going to scale, if your application needs to be robust against DNS poisoning and hijacking and whatnot, you need Anycast DNS as a professional service, professional firm. And Anycast DNS should just be made available to your domain to allow you to basically broadcast and get resolutions going faster, getting customers and getting your users to your services as quickly as possible. Firewall should be included by default. Persistent SAN storage should be included by default for performance as well as for reliability. Professional firms need to focus on their own services, whatever it is that they're doing. Pure One hosting, we're in the business of monitoring data centers. We're in the business of having staff looking at blinking lights and removing drives that have failed and replacing them without the systems going down. That's what we do. That's what a professional cloud service should provide. And that's with a 24/7 data center staff, making sure that your storage and the servers and the whatnot and the backend stays online, the power and the cooling and so on. In this day and age, I can tell you that even though we've launched since November, every day we see roughly 1 to 2 abuse cases that are levied against public cloud. And the reason for this is that public cloud is very easy to spin up, right? You get in there within a few minutes, you've got data center scalable performance at your fingertips. Imagine what a DDoS group would do with those kinds of resources. And so they tried, and they try again. It turns out that particularly with cloud, they're extremely aggressive. Marilyn Jones from USA, Pennsylvania can't write in English. There are methods to detect that our staff has to basically detect these kinds of abuses, and we watch out for that to make sure that real services that are running in the cloud are not affected. That should just be there. It should just be there for the clients that are trying to run their business in the cloud. With solution-centric capabilities, you basically ought to be able to pick essentially what solutions you need, and immediately figure out what it is that make a decision between do I want to pay for this or not. So essentially, the pricing should be transparent. It should be upfront. It should be sitting right alongside the recommended configuration. Exactly what you need for performance, and basically no more. Resource pools. You can basically select how many CPUs or memory you need. In this particular situation, imagine you have a web server and you basically run it at just minimum capacity to make sure that it can handle the load, and you set aside auto-scaling CPUs in the core that are just sitting there reserved for you to use and burst into when the load shows up. When the load is gone, those CPUs are retired. The additional memory is retired. That should just be available by default. Again, fair play pricing. It doesn't make sense to us to require customers and to require users to have and to account for puts and gets and fetches and API calls in between different servers and such that are running. It makes it very difficult. It makes it very difficult to build out an application, let alone to have to finance and to budget for it. That's another layer of complexity that we've tried to eliminate. Again, hands-free auto-scaling that should just be available. You shouldn't have to run off to I don't know, RightScale and whatnot and pay for additional development and so on to make your applications do this. Essentially, yeah, your company, the cloud hosting company ought to be available in different geographic locations. Should be in our opinion, of course, I'm a little bit biased, but in our opinion, it should be a company that has experience in hosting, physical co-location, has the staff on hand to basically manage all the things behind the scenes that you don't want to worry about. You don't want to worry about DDoS attacks. You don't want to worry about power and cooling and whatnot. And that's basically what it is that we do, and why it is that we wanted to basically offer the Zunicore solution in a way that is scalable and in a way that is transparent and kind of removes a lot of that complexity away from professional firms, while at the same time providing control back into the hands of Zunicore users. The focus areas that we have are essentially on interactive agencies and solution resellers and online gaming and web designers and VARs and so forth. Zunicore is able to, there's a open API that allows to basically create clouds and VMs and users and so forth completely behind the scenes. It's also white label enabled, so that if it needs to be pulled into a branded offer, then it can do so. And with the rest of these professional agencies, one of the things that they've got in common is that they are all project-based, right? So they're all relying on mostly razor-thin margins, mostly they don't want to have to worry about a lot of unexpected costs. And this is what we've tried really hard to do with Zunicore. So basically, what I'd like to do at this point is kind of open it up for questions. There's a free trial of Zunicore. Go out there, try it out, check it out, come by our booth. And we've recently launched. And quite frankly, what we're looking for is plenty of feedback. Let us know what features are working, what features are, if we've approached it in the right way. And help us build a truly professional, transparent cloud.